Yes, hello. It's Henry with Blue Review, and I'm going to talk about a couple of Criterion titles that I acquired during the recent flash sale. Try to run through these and not go too fast and not drone on too long, but you know me by now, and either or both of those things could easily happen. Um, so the first one is Harakiri, and this is by Masaki Kobayashi and stars Tetsuya Nakdai as a samurai, just kind of a Ronin, masterless samurai, and he comes to court of the House of Iyi, which is this kind of proud and arrogant house of samurai during the Shogun era, and he petitions to commit seppuku or harakiri, ritual suicide. If you don't know what that is, it's pretty gross. They take the blade like one side to the, or maybe it's this side. But anyway, they take it this side, and then they have to do it like this. So they're like disemboweling themselves like a cross, basically. And then, as they're dying, the what's called a second stands behind them, another samurai, and beheads them. Wow. So yeah, this is and this has been the subject of quite a few Japanese films, and some artists have, gone to great lengths to discuss it, such as Yukio Mishima. He did his own little Harakiri movie. I believe it's called Right of Love and Death or Patriotism. I think Criterion has that on DVD, not on Blu-ray yet. Mishima, of course, being one of the most famous Japanese novelists to ever get translated over here, if arguably not the most famous. Um, so this movie is probably the most well-known movie to be on this subject, and to of course have this as the direct title. Um, Came out in 1962. It's black and white. It's widescreen. 60s black and white widescreen Japanese. I'm there. That's that combination. I'll watch it all day long. I don't care what it is. Um, but this is a great movie. Um, Basically, uh, the court, approves his suicide, and he requests three of the retainers to witness and second him, and they're all curiously sick. So he begins telling the daimyo, the lord of the shogun's lord of the House of Iyi. He begins telling this guy, his name's Sato, played by Tetsuro Tamba, long gone veteran Japanese actor. Um, he tells Saito this tale, and that's what most of the movie is going to be, back and forth between the present, where he's in the lotus position, he's kind of supposedly ready to commit suicide, or and the flashbacks to how he got there. Um, and one name comes up, Matomi, and he claims to not know this guy Matomi, but then later, um, Matomi was the character that those three sickly samurais, um, were party to his harakiri. So um, he finally admits to knowing Matomi, and it gets way more convoluted than that. He doesn't just know him; he's virtually his father. Basically, their clan was dissolved a few years earlier. This movie takes place, I believe, 1630, and I think it's 1618 is their clan. I can't remember the name of their clan, but that dissolved, and the master was going to kill himself, but instead, Hanshiro, our main character, that's his name, Hanshiro Shigumo, he um, he elected to do that for his master. Um, then his best friend uh, did it anyway, and did it for both of them. And Hanshiro comes upon him as he's dying, bleeding out. So the master says, Hanshiro, don't do this, don't bother to do this for me. So that's the end of that house and that clan, and so our man Hanshiro becomes a masterless samurai or a Ronin, and just kind of wanders trying to find jobs. And the samurai are kind of ruling over the populace, by helping them, and they're also, of course, really just kind of keeping them in fear. Um, and Hanshiro is not want a part of that, but he's increasingly sliding into poverty. Um, so the interesting thing about him and his friend who committed suicide is that they're both single fathers in 17th century Japan, as fate would have it, and they remark on this to each other about how ironic this is. Not the 17th century part, but and it is kind of cool. But what happens is Hanshiro is raising his daughter Miho, but he ends up having to finish raising Matomi, and so Matomi and Miho are kind of like foster siblings, but they end up falling in love. It's not incest, and they have a baby. By this time, uh, they're pretty broke, and Miho is getting sick, and my cat is on high alert. Can you tell? So, um, this guy Matomi, I mean, he sells his sword blades and ends up walking around with these bamboo swords just for show. Um, he goes to the house of E and says, "Hey, I want to commit seppuku," and they think he's just trying to get some attention and maybe get a job as a retainer because of his nobility and facing death. And that's what he's trying to do apparently. And they call his bluff, unfortunately, and they say, "Hey, all right, we're going to let you kill yourself, and we're going to let you kill yourself with your own weapons, your bamboo swords." And that is a wrenching scene, man. He's got to tear up in his guts with some bamboo, and it's just he's got to basically use every bit of his strength to even penetrate his skin first of all, and then once he's in there, bamboo's probably breaking off, and yeah, it's a nasty scene, very bloody, but of course this is black and white, so the blood's black, not red, but still, it's very powerful. So Matomi is gone, and as you can probably guess, Hanshiro has narrated this entire tale and finally gotten to his real point in being there, which is that he wants revenge. He claims that he will commit harakiri. He keeps claiming he'll commit it if they finish listening to his story, and so when his story is over, when the daimyo Saito says, that's fine. When this is over, we'll either let you commit suicide, or if you continue to talk smack to us, we're gonna get our men and set upon you and cut you to death. Because he's basically talking a lot of shit about the samurai code, the Bushido, and they're not happy with this, and they're outraged, and it's an affront to their honor, and they're all pretty pretentious. I mean, Saito is really one of the most annoying, vile characters I've seen in a samurai film. Or maybe any film. He's thoroughly corrupt. He's thoroughly hypocritical, and he's like I don't know, he's like a modern American politician or something. Oh, sorry, but it's kind of insane, really. But it's par for the course. They want to keep the power structure in order, and they don't want a Ronin coming in here and questioning their way of doing things. So when his tale is over, he provokes them, and they do attack him, and he manages to kill 4 of them and seriously wound 8. It's an incredible scene. You've been waiting the whole film for this. Right before this happens, he talks about how the 3 retainers that he asked to attend his Harakiri and the ones that attended Matomi's, and that's kind of the final straw, is that they are they're all ill. They're all calling in sick for this ceremony, and he tosses the top knots of 2 of them down and says, I didn't kill them, but I took their top knots, so that's really a sign of their honor. So they're disgraced, and he's hoping, I think, to goad all 3 of them into killing themselves for dishonor, but they aren't doing it, and Saito is covering for them, and he talks about the last guy, the guy who was the second behind our guy. And I made a mistake. I want to correct real quick here. The second that I'm talking about right here is supposed to be this, incredible, like the most incredible swordsman in this area. Um, that's played by Tetsuro Tamba, and he's a villainous guy. Yes, the daimyo Saito. I want to say his name is. I can't remember the actor's name. I'll mispronounce it if I do remember, probably, unless I were looking right at it. And I don't. I eschew the note thing here. Maybe to my detriment. Um, but anyway, that guy is still a big asshole. I just can't think of the actor who plays him. I knew his face, but not his name. Um, so the Tetsuro Tamba character, he comes in and challenges. He comes to Hanshiro's house. This is the last flashback, and he challenges him like, "Hey, you cut their top knots. You're not gonna get me." And yeah, he not only does Hanshiro break his sword, but he gets his top knot. And he's a very unconventional fighter, and he says he had not even had a one-on-one duel in 16 years. And you got to admire this guy's spirit, man. It's inspiring. It's just his character fills you with so much feeling. He has so much nobility, and he's on this course, and he is going to see it through to the fucking end, and nothing is going to stop him. First time I watched this movie, I rented it, and I was just completely wrapped up in it for the whole 2.5 hours. And those last few minutes with the fight and the aftermath, it was just like all this tension was suddenly releasing. It was kind of like when I first watched Southern Comfort, like almost to the very last shot, you're thinking that Carradine and Booth might get killed by the Cajuns, and then this rescue helicopter comes, and it's like, and then the movie's over. Um, Oops, I just spoiled Southern Comfort for you guys. So um, this is how I felt the first time I watched it, and works of art like this, I don't know if I've got like the Stendhal syndrome, like out of the Argento movie or what, but I sometimes start weeping when I see this kind of stuff because it's the power of art. Um, it's an indescribable feeling, really, and I get a bit overwhelmed. I don't get like faint or wonky like Asia Argento did in that movie, but I do. Um, it's an elevated state almost of consciousness, and I'm sure there are a lot of people watching who have that experience with certain films to where you're just in awe of the magnitude of the craftsmanship and the message and the power of the film, the work that you've just consumed. So the final battle is a release, but and like I said, he makes some casualties. He could have done a lot better if it were another samurai film, like the other one, super notable one with Tatsuya, which is called The Sword of Doom. In Sword of Doom, he's an evil samurai, totally the opposite of Hanshiro Shigumo, and he's bastard. In the end, he's back is against the wall, and he's one man against all these people, and he kills a lot more of them than Hanshiro. And it's not because Hanshiro is holding back. It's just the evil samurai is like a total badass, and not that he doesn't get wounded, but then the movie. I'm gonna give away the ending anyway. Yeah, so it's a surprise kind of, but this one I wasn't surprised, and he had been telling them kind of facetiously that he knew he wouldn't leave this place alive no matter what happened, and his intent was to go down fighting and killing them, and he's probably going to probably trying to get to Saito and finish him off, but unfortunately there's so many samurai. They're just like pouring out of sides of this little house, and it's pretty incredible. It's not like the Sword of Doom fight at the end. It's shorter. It's less brutal and protracted, but it's really powerful, and you've been waiting for it for so fucking long that you're like, I can now exhale. Um, the ending of the movie basically shows, without giving it away, it basically shows, as if there were any doubt after this film, the entirety moving up to that moment, it drives home the hypocrisy and corruption of Saito and of his whole system. And so, in that sense, I think the fact it came out in the early 60s, and I think that it questioned things that are maybe glamorized in most samurai films. I mean, there are several that do question the code, no doubt, but this one, to me, of the ones I've seen, which is a fair amount, not a huge amount, but I've seen a fair bit of Chambara or samurai films, and this takes it to another level altogether. You're not going to forget this movie, and if you do, I don't know, man. I guess you weren't paying attention, but um, it has Blu-ray is nice. It has some extras, a video introduction by Donald Ritchie, who wrote a good book on Akira Kurosawa. There's an interview with Masaki Kobayashi, and there's video interviews with Nakadai and the screenwriter and a trailer. So, it's got several nice little bonuses. It's nice seeing Nakadai talk. He's always very engaging and witty. He's just totally immersed in the craft of acting, and I gotta say, he's a motherfucker, man. I mean, you can't mess with this guy as far as film acting goes. So, of course, I highly recommend this. So the second I wanted to talk about was uh, another black and white film. This time from the late 1950s. It only came out 5 years before Harakiri, but it was an American film called A Face in the Crowd, by Elia Kazan, written by Bud Schulberg, and it stars. I know, it's amazing. It stars Andy Griffith. There's some really cool art in the cover and throughout the booklet. I forgot this artist's name. He's a younger guy, I think, but his stuff is kind of in the style of Bill Sienkiewicz, who I'll be talking about soon in another entry to this series, by the way. So what's the story of The Face in the Crowd? It was basically Bud Schulberg writing in the aftermath of the Hollywood 10 and the HUAC hearings and all that stuff, House of Un-American whatever committee. It was kind of Schulberg writing this kind of cautionary story because he saw that television was starting to, suck up everyone's attention at that time. And so he kind of posits the uh, overlap between television celebrity and politics. And basically they round up for this show called The Face in the Crowd. Well, yeah, and it's Patricia Neal. She has a radio show, and she's incredible in this, and really stunningly beautiful, I have to say. Much, she's pretty in the movies I've seen of hers in the 40s and early 50s, but she aged really well. She's just really hot in this movie. But anyway, so she comes and she goes to a jail cell to kind of do like field recordings of the locals. And one guy comes forward, and his name's, well, she doesn't know his first name at first, but his name's Larry Rhodes. And he won't give his first name, so she's just like, makes a pun, and she's like, Lonesome Rhodes, and he's like, lonesome. And then this guy kind of, you know, it's like he's been dared to do something, and he whips out his guitar and he writes a song right then and there after doing, jamming a little bit, and it kind of becomes his signature song, "New Man in the Morning." Bud Schulberg wrote all the lyrics to all the songs too, not the music. I forgot the guy who did the music for the film. He did the songs, um, but they're all acoustic guitar and him singing. He's got a big booming voice, and it's really great. I mean, he's almost kind of like Johnny Cash-esque at times. And keep remembering this is Andy Griffith. So did I mention it was Andy Griffith? I guess I did. It's Andy Griffith. So I'm sure everyone knows who Andy Griffith is from something over the last, I don't know, 7 decades of film and television. But this was his film co-starring debut. I think he'd been in No Time for Sergeants and maybe some cameos, but done some television and stage. But this was before the Andy Griffith Show. So think about that. Let that kind of ruminate, in your mind there. So this guy has this unexpected populist appeal, and he catches on really quick. And one of these cats that knows Marcia, Patricia's character, suggests they put him on television, and he wants to make some money out of him. This guy called the General, and I forgot the character's full name, but the General is, he's a pretty nice guy, but he's definitely, in it for the money, and so he kind of bankrolls, takes a risk on Lonesome Rhodes, and they have this regular series called A Face in the Crowd on television, and Rhodes is very irreverent towards all of it the whole time, and that actually adds to his appeal. People actually like him being kind of a jerk at times and just speaking off the cuff and just, hey man, speaking his mind. So, this is a prescient film. I mean, this film, I say, successfully predicted the presidency of Donald Trump. I mean, it's the difference is that Donald Trump grew up kind of rich and insulated, and this guy grew up kind of, basically living more or less up in the hills and in the streets, poor. But there's that thing, where it hooks with the common man or whatever. Like Lonesome Rhodes sign is something like the greatest. I forgot the whole thing, but it's basically like the greatest whatever is the ordinary mind of the ordinary man, and he's a megalomaniac, and Andy Griffith even describes him that way in an interview on here. And they did manage to catch Andy at his very advanced age for an interview, and I'll get to that with the extras. And this guy, he is a trip. He's hilarious, but at the same time, he's shaking things up, and so there's cool qualities about him. But then at the same time, he's really just, it's not in it for the money in his sense. He does make a lot of money, and he does become more educated about the ways of the city life and all this stuff. It's almost like Tarzan's Great Adventure with Johnny Weissmuller, except Lonesome is a much quicker study than Weissmuller's Tarzan, who's kind of dull for a Tarzan character. But yeah, he picks up on it, and he goes into business, and his show does great. He gets his own show called The Cracker Barrel, and basically, yeah, he gets a bunch of crackers around to, a bunch of older white men from the, kind of country bumpkins. Even he's calling them these kind of names, which are descriptive, but could also be termed as derisive. And of course, on Facebook, if you use the term cracker to describe a white racist, that's considered hate speech. I've been actually banned twice for that, for insulting a white racist by calling them a cracker. But I'm white, I'm a cracker, but I'm not that kind of cracker. And but these are the kind of people that love Lonesome Rhodes, and it's in an inescapable reality. I'm not here to create, hysteria or controversy, but I'd rather do it on YouTube than Facebook any day of the week. And people can hear my context here and maybe get what I'm saying. But these are the kind of people, quote unquote, that voted for Donald Trump. And that's true, because it was a faux populism, and it was appealing to baser instincts. And that's what Lonesome Rhodes did in this 1957 movie. Trump was like a little kid then, 10 years old. And so he has a meteoric rise. And it looks like he's going to marry Marcia. She's kind of taken in by him and in love with him. And unfortunately, he marries some strange bayonet whirling drum majorette who's, maybe 17, called, I forgot what her name was, but she's played by Lee Remick. It's Lee Remick's first film. A lot of good talent in early roles in this movie. I'll get to a couple more in a minute. But Lee Remick, yeah, and so it's kind of, and she's not the brightest bulb, and he knows that, it's just a sexual thing and also a image thing, and Marcia's heartbroken, but they stay in business together, and things get more and more turbulent, and basically he becomes an advisor to a presidential candidate who's very right wing, naturally, and this guy is like, he seems like a friendly little cuddly guy at first, but then when he starts talking about cutting Social Security and all this kind of everybody being lazy and slack, again, prophetic, but basically he yeah, I mean, everyone listens to Lonesome Roads. He's like coaching this guy to come out of the uptight era of these lengthy speeches and to embrace the television era. And there's a line where he says, things. It's either Lonesome Rhodes or one of the people working with him, and he says, we've got to. I think it is Lonesome Rhodes. He tells the presidential candidate named Fuller. He's like, Fuller, he's like, you gotta step forward. I mean, television is kind of where it's at. And the general advises Fuller and his own advisors, and Rhodes irreverently calls him Curly Fuller because he's balding, and this is the kind of guy he is. And so yeah, he reshapes his campaign and starts appearing. He appears on the Cracker Barrel. Go figure. And he starts throwing out like little sound bites instead of um, his long treatises about those lazy good for nothings on Social Security. So now he's saying it to in a populist fashion, and basically the guys who work on the Cracker Barrel, who are the crackers, they plan to do exactly what most Americans do today, which is vote directly against their best interests, because the people who benefit the most from these social safety nets back then a lot of times were these kind of people. But they're like getting all fired up and saying, yeah, man, Worthington Fuller, Curly Fuller, and so there's going to have a big party, and Marsha's kind of had it, and she's got a good friend named Mel, played by Walter Matthau, an early Walter Matthau part. He's incredible. To me, he's like the Bud Schulberg surrogate character, the kind of intellectual, acerbic kind of guy who's kind of noting all this. And he even gives a speech at the end kind of saying, this is what's going to happen to people like you. And he's kind of predicting the future of television stardom and demagoguery on television. And by this time, Rhodes has an empire, and he is an influencer, as they call them these days, and he truly is. That's like his big thing. And he puts Tony Franciosa in charge of his business, who ends up snatching 51% of it and being able to fire Lonesome Rhodes himself if he wants to. And this was an early Tony Franciosa film too, as well. Unlike Walter Matthau, you might not know who. You probably know who he is, but you might not. Younger viewers are less cult savvy. But he had a long career with character actors and played a lot of bad guys and also some detectives. But he was, as far as cult movies goes, he starred in Web of the Spider, the remake of Margheriti's Castle of Blood. It's Margheriti's own remake. He remade his black and white Gothic into color. Franciosa is very well known in those areas as being the head mob villain, of course, a virulent racist in Across 110th Street, a brilliant film from the early 70s. So this is an early, cult film appearance of Franciosa. It's his first, and maybe one of his very first films, period, if not his first. So basically, by this time, they have this empire, and it's about to topple because Marcia sells out Lonesome because she's just had it. And I won't get into all that because again, if you really want to see the movie and have never seen it, I won't give you the spoiler. But basically, the harder they rise, the harder they fall. And actually, Bud Schulberg wrote that novel that was kind of famous at one time called The Harder They Fall. Not to be confused with The Harder They Come, The Harder They Fall with Jimmy Cliff, another great movie and soundtrack album. So, he topples, but as Mathau's character outlines, he'll be back, but it's going to be a little bit different, and the next big new thing is going to come through town. And it's always going to be this recyclable thing, this cycle. And Mel, Mr. Mathau there, he pretty much in 1957 pretty much sums up our obsession with celebrity and television and its intersection with politics and the people over the ensuing 63 years since this film came out in theaters. So I love it. It's powerful. It's great. Andy Griffith is at his very best. He plays it almost slightly too broad at times, but that's okay because the character is like a psychopath. So none of the other characters go off the wheels. They're all like, perfectly modulated within, their type of character and their function in the script. But sometimes Griffith is just almost too outrageous and out of control, loud, and just to where it's almost like ridiculous. But um, that's his character. And think about people you could compare him to, like Trump or any other celebrities like that who are just over the top, and that's really their real personality. Some of these wrestling icons might be a decent example. People that have come on television and are just fired up all the time. They've got this energy, and they're just like, and it sucks people in. People get taken in by it, as Mathau says. We all got taken in. It's okay. Um, so this great Blu-ray has some nice stuff. It has some interviews with Kazan's biographer, also with Griffith's biographer, and it has a documentary with interviews with Patricia Neal, Andy Griffith, and Tony Franciosa, and Bud Schulberg, and a couple of film scholars just for good measure, and a trailer, and a really cool essay, which I am not finished reading in here, which I'd like to see. I guess I can open it up. Here's some more of this kind of Sienkiewicz slash McGinnis art on the inner booklet here. Wow. So anyway, I actually came in almost at 30 minutes on this. I enjoy talking about these two movies. I deeply enjoy watching them every time I see them, and I'm thrilled that they're now in my permanent Blu-ray library. And if and when you guys have the cash, they should be in yours. So, and no, I don't work for Criterion. So anyway, take care, and I will talk to you soon. I have another video in mind coming up real soon, and that should be hopefully kind of interesting. All right, take care. Bye.